Vogue recently dropped exclusive photos of the masks and costumes for Masquerade, the immersive Phantom of the Opera coming to New York. And as someone who has tickets to see the show next month and whose first Broadway experience was Phantom, I have so many thoughts on these bold new designs. Hi, I'm Julian. This is Julian's Front Row Theater, and we need to talk about Lady Gaga's collaborator designing Phantom masks, why car parts are inspiring 19th century Paris, and whether hardcore Phantom fans are going to love or hate this approach. Before we dive into these costumes, I need to tell you about my experience with the show. Phantom of the Opera was my first Broadway experience back in 2010. I absolutely adored the 2004 movie, and I went back to see it on Broadway in 2011 from the front row. I even saw the redesigned touring production, which I actually loved, even though many hardcore fans hated it. This production discarded Maria Björnson's iconic scenic design in favor of a new design that was more modern and allegedly easier to tour. I think that this immersive production will be similarly polarizing among fans, thanks to the details in this Vogue article. When Phantom closed on Broadway after 35 years, I was a little sad that I didn't get to see it one more time. So when rumors of this immersive production started to swirl and the guerrilla marketing campaign launched, my excitement grew and grew. I got tickets to Masquerade as soon as they went on sale, and I knew I had to approach it with an open mind while still honoring what made the original production so special. A while back, it was announced that Masquerade will be directed by Diane Paulus. This choice is very exciting to me because Diane Paulus reimagined another classic when she directed a circus take on Pippin. It's also worth noting that she's married to one of the producers of Sleep No More, the wildly successful immersive adaptation of Macbeth that ran for over 10 years in New York. For me, the biggest shock in this article is that Nicola Formichetti, Lady Gaga's longtime collaborator and the mind behind iconic moments like the meat dress, is the director of masks for this production. At first, this felt like kind of a mismatch to me. Formichetti deals in futuristic, cutting-edge, boundary-pushing fashion. By contrast, Phantom deals in lush 19th century Parisian romanticism. But then I remembered Lady Gaga's 2009 VMAs performance. She sang Paparazzi and wore this incredible mask and bled out on stage. It was pure theater kid energy. Here's what's kind of interesting. Formichetti says he and Gaga never put Phantom on their mood board, but that it's just engraved in their DNA. That actually makes a lot of sense to me because both Gaga and Phantom deal with transformation and becoming someone else through costume and performance. His inspiration list though? Car parts, broken glass, Amanda Lepore's punk rock glamour, and surrealism meets S&M dungeons. This is where I start getting a little nervous. Look, I'm all for reinterpreting classic material, but car parts feel anachronistic to a show set in the 1880s. The first cars barely existed then and would not have been a common sight in Paris when this show takes place. This actually reminds me of Mimi Lien's scenic design for Florence Welch's Gatsby: An American Myth. That production used broken up car parts in a way that was thematically relevant, but also brilliantly subverted the audience's association with the typical glitz and glamour of Gatsby. But the punk and S&M references for Masquerade? I get that Phantom has a certain dark sex appeal, especially in songs like the title track with those rock vocals. But this seems like it's pushing against some of the core romanticism that makes Phantom work. The disclaimer on the Masquerade site even warns of nudity, which feels a little out of place. However, and this is important, I like when creative teams take big swings. Better to be divisive and memorable than safe and forgettable. The original Maria Björnson designs will always be iconic, but if this show is just going to copy them, why do it at all? Especially so soon after the original show closed. Now, before we dive into these specific costume reveals, let me introduce you to the man behind them. Emilio Sosa, the costume designer for Masquerade. Emilio Sosa is a Tony-nominated costume designer with serious credentials, nominated for both Top Dog Underdog and Porgy and Bess. He got his start at New York's legendary Grace Costumes Shop, working for opera divas like Beverly Sills and Denise Graves. What I love about Sosa's approach here is that he's designing like a film where the camera is right in your face. As someone who's seen the show from the front row and looked at the costumes up close at exhibits, the level of detail is incredible. Most people in the audience never get this experience. When Sosa says he's designing like an opera costumer 100 years ago with unlimited resources, I get excited. That is the exact level of craftsmanship that Phantom deserves. Speaking of resources, the partnership with Preciosa for 30,000 crystals for the chandelier alone tells you something about this production's budget. They are not cutting corners. Now, let's talk about this new Phantom mask design, and I have to show you something. This reminds me of two things. First, the 1990 miniseries starring Charles Dance featured a similar mask design, and also Lady Gaga's Poker Face music video. Formichetti says it represents the Phantom's shattered past, which feels a bit on the nose to me. I have my own interpretation, which is that it reflects the Phantom's status as master of illusions. This is more explicit in Gaston Leroux's novel, but just think about how the Phantom comes to Christine in the mirror.
Come to me, angel of music.
Encountering that mask in the dark catacombs, the visual trickery would be unsettling. My biggest concern though, I sincerely hope they are not entirely eliminating the iconic white half mask. That's literally the brand of the show, and hardcore Phantom fans, who are absolutely the people paying premium prices for this experience right when it opens, will not be happy if they eliminate that. As an aside, I've always found it a little funny that the logo for the show is a full mask and not the actual design. But the Phantom isn't the only one who's getting a makeover. Let me walk you through the other costume reveals because honestly, some of these are stunning. First up, Raoul's Masquerade mask with these incredible gold scales. This design is absolutely gorgeous. The gold filigree details reflect Raoul's status as a wealthy patron of the opera and also tie in some of the architectural elements of the opera house itself. Formichetti says that the scales represent Raoul's sense of justice, and I totally buy that. Think of when he sings, "It's an engagement, not a crime." He can't understand Christine's unusual behavior. Compared to the original show's more modest design of Raoul's masquerade costume, I like that this mask leans into the whimsy and fun of the song. Then we get to Piangi's mask, and this is where it starts getting a little weird. Formichetti describes it as a slightly ugly, disturbing piggy with sexual connotations. Piangi has always been a comic relief character, but I've never found him disturbing. Maybe this production will change his characterization and make him a philanderer who flirts with the audience. But the pig choice? Since Piangi is typically cast as a plus-size actor, I don't really like this. If they cast against type though and change the characterization, I could see it working. Now we get to this ensemble masquerade look. And this is one of my favorites of the bunch, actually. Sosa said he wanted movement and sound with bells and exaggerated ruffles, and this is going to add a really cool sensory element to the immersive experience. The origami fantasy mask is gorgeous, and it looks like a reinterpretation of one of the jester characters from the original show. I think it's funny how this costume is more detailed than some of the main character costumes, but I guess they might need to be a little more recognizable. Moving on to the women. Carlotta's Think of Me gown is everything a diva deserves. Sosa says it's an Easter egg nod to my opera upbringing and that it's big, bold, too much, but that's opera. Perfect. Carlotta literally has a song called Prima Donna. She is the diva. The construction and detailing are incredible, and I love that the headpiece signals her status as the queen bee of the opera. But here's what I noticed. This monochromatic gold look is kind of flat, especially compared to Maria Björnson's original design for the dress, which had these beautiful jewel tones. I'm hoping that Christine's Think of Me dress has a little more color to set it apart from Carlotta. Speaking of Christine, Her "Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again" cloak represents the perfect duality between sumptuousness and comfort. By this point in the show, Christina's the opera's newest darling, but "Wishing You Were Somehow Here Again" is her at her most vulnerable. She's yearning for her dead father's protection and comfort. Emilio Sosa says that this is one of the more period-accurate costumes in the show, and I'm relieved to hear that he's grounding some of these in historical accuracy, especially compared to Formichetti's more anachronistic list of inspirations. We also know that this scene of Masquerade is going to be staged on the venue's roof, so the fabric manipulations and pleating will look very cool when the wind hits them. Looking at all these designs together, they look cohesive and of a similar vision, all except for the Phantom's mirrored mask. This kind of makes sense given the Phantom's status as an outsider and a genius, but I still hope they retain the iconic white half mask and that this mirrored design is only used in certain sequences. I am nervous about the set design though. The official Masquerade Instagram account posted this video of painter Kenny Scharf creating this kind of graffiti style painting on the outside of the venue. To be honest, Phantom of the Opera and street art don't really mix well to me. I hope this is just an exterior design and it's not indicative of what's actually inside the venue. My prediction is that this show is going to be extremely polarizing. Phantom of the Opera fans are pretty passionate and vocal. Some have seen this show dozens of times dating back to the 80s. If the execution doesn't deliver, word of mouth could turn negative very fast. I'm very optimistic personally. Reinterpreting classic material is how you keep it alive and in the cultural zeitgeist. Just think of shows like The Wizard of Oz or Wicked that have had many non-replica productions and have introduced new designs to adoring audiences across the globe. I'll be seeing Masquerade in about a month, and I'm incredibly excited to make a full review breaking down whether these bold creative choices work out in person. Subscribe to see that review, and let me know in the comments. Are you excited about this new take on Phantom, or do you think they're messing with perfection? I would also love to know which costume detail from the article you're most excited or concerned about. I'll see you from the front row.